Welcome back to Speducation. I am your host, Brandon Reed, and as always, if this is your first time to the channel, a special welcome to you. Well, it's a new week and we have a new lesson. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Today's lesson, outdated terms. So, special education is a field that is constantly evolving. I mean, look at the acronyms that we use. I mean, at one point, autism was AUT, now it's ASD. And emotional disability was once known as EH, emotionally handicapped, now it's ED. And even Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's was its own disability, but now it falls under the umbrella of autism because technically it is a function of autism. It is autism, just higher functioning. So, with all of these different changes and ever evolving terms that we're using, it's sometimes important to remember that there are terms that we don't really want to use anymore because they're outdated and they can be offensive, which is why we're going to be talking about some of them today. Be cautious of antiquated or outdated terms. Be conscientious of antiquated words that have negative connotations for people with disabilities. For example, handicapped or crippled. The language surrounding disabilities has changed significantly over the years. And we're going to take a look at some of those words that we sometimes think, oh, that's not offensive, but it can be. So just keep in mind to keep an open mind as we go through those words today. So terms like these used to be common, but not so much anymore. Able-bodied. This term is used to describe someone who does not identify as having a disability. Some members of the disability community oppose its use because it implies that all people with disabilities lack able bodies or the ability to use their bodies well. The term non-disabled and the phrases does not have a disability or is not living with a disability are more neutral choices and should be used. Brain injury or traumatic brain injury. The background for this is the Centers for Disease Control define traumatic brain injury as an injury that affects how the brain works. And one of the recommendations is use person with a brain injury or person with a traumatic brain injury rather than brain damaged, which is considered derogatory. Congenital disability. A person who has a congenital disability has had a disability since birth. Some of the more common ones include Down syndrome, heart-related medical conditions, and most forms of cerebral palsy. Congenital is not interchangeable with genetic, as a genetic condition is present from birth, but a congenital condition is not necessarily genetic. So it is acceptable to state that someone has a congenital disability or lives with a congenital disability. Alternatively, it is acceptable to say that a person has had a disability since birth or was born with a disability. Avoid using things like defect or defective when describing a disability because the terms imply that the person is somehow incomplete or subpar. Crazy, loony, mad, psycho, nuts, deranged. These words were once commonly used to describe people with mental illness, but are now considered offensive. They are still used in a variety of contexts, but should be avoided. Do not use these words, particularly when reporting on mental illness, unless they are part of a quote that is essential to the story. And in educational terms, a lot of individuals that may suffer from these types of things are labeled as EH, emotionally handicapped, or ED, emotionally disabled. Although those terms themselves may be kind of, I don't know, offensive, disability, handicapped, but they're a lot better than calling someone crazy, psycho, or nuts. Deaf and dumb, or deaf mute. Dumb was once widely used to describe a person who could not speak and implied the person was incapable of expressing himself or herself. Deaf mute was traditionally used to refer to people who can neither speak nor hear in traditional ways. So avoid these terms as they often are used inaccurately and can be offensive. It is acceptable to refer to someone as deaf or are hard of hearing. And here's one, I would say the mother of them all, mentally retarded. The terms mentally retarded or retard and mental retardation were once common terms that are now considered outdated and offensive. It was actually President Obama back in 2010 who signed a measure known as Rose's Law that replaced the term mental retardation with intellectual disability in many areas of government, including federal law. So try not to use it. Otherwise, the term intellectual disability is acceptable. Consider using people first language as well, such as a person with an intellectual disability, rather than an intellectually disabled person. As always, ask the person which they prefer. I know. A lot of people will say, seriously, Brandon, you're going woke? This is wokeness, isn't it? But think of it this way. These are offensive terms that were once regular but are now more offensive. And if you were out on the street, would you want to be called something other than what you actually are? For example, if you had a name of Tom and somebody kept referring to you as Bob, Bob, hey Bob, how you doing, Bob? Eventually, it would get tiring and you'd get upset, right? Or maybe somebody referring to you based on your physical appearance. Hey, fat boy. Hey, string bean. Hey, redneck. These are offensive terms. And whether you like to admit it or not, if you were called these, you'd probably get a little upset. So all the disability community is asking is just be a little courteous and remember that we're people too, and we don't really appreciate those offensive terms. So if you could make an effort, it would be appreciated. So, if you liked what you saw, you learned something new, or you're new to the channel, please click that like button. And if you want updates on future videos, feel free to click the subscribe button and ring the bell for updates on future videos. And please keep in mind that those words that I used in this video were not meant to be offensive to anybody. And if you were offended, I do apologize. But those words are just a few of many, many, many that are still considered offensive or might even still be used today. So if you want a complete list, feel free to check out the link in the description to the video. And as always, if you have questions or comments, or there's a particular topic in special education that you want me to cover, please drop a line in the comments section and I'd be happy to talk about it. And until next time, class dismissed.